Good evening, boys and girls. I have an interesting story tonight because it asks, Mama, Mama, where are you from? And it's by Marie Bradby. And what I find interesting is how she describes where she's from. Usually people say, I'm from a certain town or city like Oak Lawn or Chicago. Sometimes people say a state like Indiana or California or Florida. And sometimes people say countries because people have come from other countries like Australia or England or Mexico, okay? And this story, she describes where she's from. Mama, where are you from? Where are you from, Mama? I'm from Monday mornings, washing loads of clothes in the wringer washer, and peach baskets full of laundry to hang on the clothesline, strung from tree to tree, the sun bleaching the sheets and the wind whipping them dry. In the old days, they would wash them in the tub against this washboard, put it through the wringer, and the wringer would wring out as much of the water as possible, and then you would hang up the clothes to dry. I'm from beans, green, lima, and peas, picked, strung, snapped, and shelled into pans, then put on the stove to simmer for an hour. I don't mind green beans and peas. I'm not into lima beans. I am a peddler driving a creaky old wagon with a big old horse and calling up and down the street, Fish man, fish man, I've got fresh trout, spots, and croakers today. Fish man, fish man. When did you get them? My mother would ask. They're real fresh. They came in the dock early this morning. All right, she'd say, I'll take some croakers. And when I read this, it was like, what in the world is a croaker? Is that a real name? Or is that like a slang term? And it turns out, I went and looked it up because I did not know. It's an Atlantic fish, very abundant in the North Atlantic waters. And it's important for commercial fishing, in other words, for people fishing to provide fish for people, and as a sport fish. So that's what a croaker is. And probably the reason I've never heard of it is because it's from the Atlantic, and we're in the middle of the US, nowhere near the Atlantic or Pacific, and probably because I don't like fish. So, but a croaker is a certain type of fish. I learned something. Calling, ragman, ragman, got any rags to sell? 10 cents a pound. My mother would give him a bundle of worn out clothes and later stash the money in a cookie jar. Nowadays, we just throw stuff out. Back then, they'd save them for rags and things. Calling, Iceman, Iceman. If it was really hot, we would get 2 blocks of ice. Mama would crack it with a pick and give me the chips to suck on. See how she's got a big chip of ice in her hands? Back in the day, they didn't have refrigerators. For a while, they had what was called an ice box, and you would put a big block of ice in the top and close the door, and then you could put food in the bottom, and it would keep the food fresh and cold for a certain amount of time. That's what they used. But they didn't have refrigerators, so they had to use ice. Can you imagine? So they didn't have ice makers to just get ice whenever they wanted. Mama, where is that place? Where is that place, Mama? It's where the edge of town met the countryside, where the city walk ended and chickens ran through the yards. where families grew into a neighborhood as close as knit sweaters, where we threw up our hand to wave at everyone we saw, where I saw Miss Mary passing our house in the morning on her way to work, and Mr. Thompson coming home from baking bread all night. So the very edge of town. It's where the school bus took my older brother and sister way across town, past school, after school, until it came to a school where all the children were brown, some light, some dark, some in between. There, where days took their time and morning lay on the rolling hills as long as she pleased, where I played under a gumball tree that took up the whole sky, and wondered why Miss Mary cleaned someone else's house, why the sidewalk ended at the edge of my neighborhood, and why my brother and sister didn't go to the school right up the street. Where afternoons my brothers delivered newspapers, and I sprinkled and rolled up clothes, while my sister pressed with two flat irons, one to use while the other to heat up on the stove to be ready when the first went cold, where everything we wore and used was starched and ironed, even dish towels and underwear. Now see how she's got the iron in her hand? There's no electricity, so you would have heated it up on the stove. See the one back here? And you would use this one until it got cold, and then you'd switch it and use the hot one, and you would iron the clothes. Can you imagine ironing even your underwear? Where Friday evenings we'd fried fish outdoors, and my cousins would come over with cherry pie and ice cream. We would sit around tubs of iced sodas in the backyard, and Daddy would say to Cousin Albert, "What'll you have?" It's fun to have family get all together. Where the children played 1, 2, 3, red light, while the adults listened to ball games on the radio, the Washington Senators and the Baltimore Orioles, where Dad played his old Duke Ellington and Count Basie records, and we danced in the shadows, switching our hips, popping our fingers, and pretending to be adults. My mom loved Duke Ellington and Count Basie. She loved that kind of music. It's good stuff. And this kind of record player, you did not use electricity. You would have wound it up to make it work. Mama, can I go there? Can I go there, Mama? Yes, we can travel through roads in my memory. Let's see. Up the stairs, sliding down the hall, passing beds full of children, heads full of new dreams, nights full of stars. Her mama's got some wonderful memories. Yes, I am that morning washing, bean snapping, wagon watching, tree swinging, Miss Mary waving, brown bus riding, clothes sprinkling, croaker eating, red light playing, finger popping, star dreaming girl. That's where I'm from. Isn't that a neat way to describe where you're from? It's a whole different way. I would never have thought to do that. It's pretty neat. If you get the chance, if you have grandparents and parents, make sure you ask them about what it was like growing up and where they grew up and what was different. I remember asking my grandma what was so different when she grew up, and she said they used a horse and buggy to go everywhere. There was no telephones, no radios. The stove was worked with wood. You had to go to the outhouse. I mean, everything. It was so different, and her stories and tales were really fascinating. And those are some memories I have, and I hope you get some memories like that of your grandparents and parents. Okay, for now, good night, sleep tight, happy dreams.